I think we'll go ahead and get started now. We have a lot of people here. Thank you for waiting for us. And welcome, everybody, whether you are here at the University of Texas or in Austin or anywhere around the world. We are excited that you could join us at the Knight Center for this excellent panel that's called Voices in Exile, Journalism, Resistance, and Resilience in Latin America. And this panel is part of the University of Texas at Austin's International Education Week. And at the Knight Center, we are so thrilled and honored to be able to have with us, virtually, of course, today, three founders of independent media outlets throughout Latin America. We have Mely Reyes from Efecto Cocuyo in Venezuela, Carlos Fernando Chamorro de Confidencial in Nicaragua, and César Fagoaga de Revista Factum in El Salvador. And just to let everybody know, I will be moderating this panel. I'm Summer Harlow. I'm the Associate Director of the Knight Center for Journalism in the Americas, and we will have a conversation today. We're going to ask a few questions and hopefully have time to respond to some of all of y'all's questions here as well. So to kick things off, I would just like each of you to introduce yourselves and to speak a little bit about your news outlet and its place in the media system and the political system in your countries, the current state of press freedom in your home country, and a little bit about why you ended up leaving your country, how you made this decision to go into exile. So, Carlos Fernando, would you like to start things for us?
Thank you, Summer. Hello, Mely, César, and all the audience that is with us. It's a privilege to share with you my experience, our experiences as journalists in exile. Well, first of all, it's something that never crossed into my mind that I would ever have to go into exile. I founded Confidencial almost 30 years ago in 1996, and we we were established as an independent media outlet overseeing power, public power, private power. We always had this tense and competing relationship with power. But when the Daniel Ortega government started again in 2007, a new kind of relationship was established. It was not a competition between the media and the government to establish the agenda, but it was rather a kind of a war, the enemy kind of confrontation, no dialogue possible at all. And this process was established in 2007, but it's still there. It's been in power for 18 years. So the turning point that forced me to go into exile was the result of a long process of criminalization of freedom of the press and freedom of opinion that has this turning point after the April civil protest in Nicaragua in the year 2018, in which you could see the concentration of all different kind of crimes against the media. And for myself, the let's say the last moment was the assault on our newsroom in this late December 2018. Our newsroom was assaulted by the police with no judicial order. All our equipment was robbed, and we keep working online the day after. Then our newsroom was permanently occupied by military people from the police. And it was in these circumstances in which, for the first time, I was facing the real possibility of being detained illegally with no legal process at all. So I faced this dilemma of saying, well, I could be in prison tomorrow, silence, or I'll go to exile to continue doing journalism. And this was like very, like the agony of this decision was very difficult for me and my family. I left Nicaragua through blind spots through the border to Costa Rica. And I continued doing journalism in Costa Rica. And 11 months later, I came back to Nicaragua. My newsroom was still occupied by the police, but we opened a new newsroom. And 2 years later, in June 2021, I had to go for the second time to exile because the police assaulted our newsroom and a second time. And I just want to finish with this distinction. One thing is emergency, when you have to leave your country to protect yourself, you or several group of journalists. Another thing is permanent exile, is a permanent condition in which we have been going through in the last 4 years since 2021. And it's not just myself as the director of Confidencial, it's all our newsroom, everyone, and there's no in a single independent news outlet in Nicaragua. Everyone had to leave and to work in exile because otherwise they will be in prison. And I'm not talking rhetorically. I mean, there have been several colleagues that have spent several years in prisons. Our newsroom, it's still confiscated illegally, just like La Prensa, 100% Noticias, and more than 50 uh, media outlets in Nicaragua have been shut down.
Thank you. Luz Mely?
Good morning for people who is in this hour and for people who are far. Good evening. Buenos días a todos y a todas los que están de este lado del continente y los que están del otro lado, buenas noches. Summer, I always say that I am smarter in Spanish than in English. No, it's a joke from a very famous actress. So I would like to talk about my experiences and the experiences of other Venezuelan journalists that they have to leave the country. And I focus on an investigation about the reasons that they have to leave. And I wrote an extensive essay called in Spanish, Te tienes que ir. First, I would like to share
Which is
about
you have to leave for
you
those
have
who
to
might
leave.
not speak Spanish.
Thank you. First, I would like to respond your question about what is Efecto Cocuyo. Efecto Cocuyo is an independent media outlet in Venezuela. It was founded by four female journalists uh, 11 years ago when, we didn't know what was going to happen in Venezuela. By that time, we used to say that it was the most darkest moment in the press in Venezuela. Well, I have to say right now that we were wrong at the time. It was the worst time that we have lived, but it's no the worst time we have to live in the years for coming. And then Efecto Cocuyo. Cocuyo is a little bug that emits light, and we try to spread with this kind of narrative that we are together, the people, the readers, the audiences, and journalists. Together, we are delivering light out information to illuminate an entire nation. That is our narrative, our focus. We also worked a lot with young generation of journalists, training journalists in Venezuela, delivering hard-hitting investigation, and doing a lot of alliance with Venezuelan media, independent media, and with other media in Latin America, independent media, like The Clip, these different organization and human rights organizations. what do I what what make me to take the decision to leave my country? Okay, I have lived the country state by state. I mean, 5 years ago, I I made a publication against the version of the Fiscal General, the General Attorney, about the death of political activists. This political activist was they say that he committed suicide since the 10th floor of the building of the police, the political police. I, I know that it was impossible that by that time he was in that space without any authorization of the police. So I did only question what I always say, that something that we have to do as journalists, no matter the space that we are, is questions. So I began to question, and immediately that I asked about why this person was there, who were around there, this kind of interrogation and questioning the version. And they decide to take me to go to declare for anything, no? And some of my friend advised me, and then that day I have to leave the country in a few minutes. I leave to my office, and then I have to send to look for my passport and then go the country. And then I could back to the country again, but in 2019 was a shutdown, general shutdown in all the country. And then again, the government began to persecute journalists, and they put in prison journalists that it was very famous in Venezuela, Luis Carlos Diaz. And then we realized that the government was looking for journalists we are delivering information. And the last time, even I continue doing my job, and I continue going to Venezuela and staying in Venezuela. But the last time I was, I was submit, I don't know if the word, I suffered a very, very, very defamation campaign that exposed me and my team to a situation of persecution. And at that moment, all of my advisor, my friends, my family told me, okay, Luz, you have to leave. You have to leave the country. When I tried to bring my story to you, I went to look for the story of other Venezuelan journalists who are in exile in the States, and it's more or less the same pattern, the same things. They were attacked while they were doing the job, and they were exposed in public media, and they were persecuted by police. Right now, we say that we are living a very demanding time, because we have 20 journalists or working with the press in jail. That is never before was happened this kind of situation, and the persecution is day to day. But I also have to say, Summer and everybody, that something is different. For example, for Nicaragua, and there are a lot of journalists in Venezuela, in the grounds, trying to do the job. So what we have to do, what we are doing right now, is to miss the experiences, the situation that we are living in exile, with the journalists that they are still in Venezuela doing the job.
That's interesting. Thank you. And César.
Hi, buenos días to everyone. Good morning. I'm guessing I'm the new one on the block, so I'm very happy to be with you today. My name is César Fagoaga. I'm the director of the Revista Factum, Factum magazine. We are a digital native investigative news outlet in El Salvador, from El Salvador. Right now, it's from El Salvador, not in anymore. We were founded in 2014, and our focus has always been a deep investigative reporting covering corruption, migration, violence, and human rights. We've been known for using strong multimedia tools to connect with younger audience. For the last years, our work has brought various types of persecution, even under previous governments. But the situation right now in El Salvador is very different. This guy, President Bukele, has dismantled the entire system of checks and balance and finally ended democracy. And this path the way for a crackdown. The most significant turning point came in last January of this year. Until then, we have some pressure from international community, particularly from the United States, which played a role containing the government worst impulse against journalists, human rights defenders, and political opponents. However, the United States announced when the United States, the new government announced a cut to economic aid through its cooperation programs, specifically those were supporting civil society, NGOs, and media. We understood that one thing is coming. The game changed completely. We were stripped of our last layer of protection. Nobody will intervene in something happen if something happened to journalists, activists, political opponents, human rights defenders. Knowing this, many of us, I began planning for an exit. It wasn't a surprise because I have told my family for years that exile was a real possibility due to my work, but it was still a reality very difficult to believe, very difficult to face. We knew the moment will come, but we just didn't know exactly when. But the final signal came in May. The government feel free to remove his muzzle, his bozal, and show his most authoritarian face. They began mass arrests. And a week after I left El Salvador, one of the country's most important human rights lawyers, Ruth Eleonora Lopez, was detained. That confirmed to many of us that we are all targets. A few days later, we know that there is a list of many journalists that government want to put in jail because of our works. This triggered what historians are calling the most significant exile of independent press in El Salvador history. Since May, over 50 journalists have been forced to leave the country. My decision to go into exile was a painful but necessary act of survival. It was a strategical move to protect myself and my family and to ensure that Factum mission to report the truth call continue from outside.
And Luz Mely, you brought up an interesting point a minute ago when you said that the situation on the ground in Venezuela is a little bit different than Nicaragua, and then the situation in El Salvador is also different. So from your different perspectives, how do you continue to do journalism in exile? How do you fact check? How do you verify information? How do you still hold power to account when you are in a different country?
Me?
Everybody, feel free to jump
Okay.
in.
Well, I think that the most important thing is the possibility to move that we already have right now. For example, we can do interview by Zoom, and we can do a lot of. We have a lot of tools to do our job. Even we have satellite possibilities, to access the information as Armando .info, which is investigative outlet, had done in Venezuela, looking for the information about the exploitation of some minerals and this kind of thing. So I think that the situation right now is different because we have the technology to to see some situation in Venezuela, but in a classical way, to develop the relationship with the sources and with other journalists. I think we are missing an hybrid, a combination, because some of my sources, there are a lot of sources that I made when I grew up as a journalist in Venezuela, because they know me. We used to chat, and I used to look for them, no? And there is something like ironic, because some of that sources are now in exile. Even the sources that work for the government, the socialist government. So what something that I have done, and right now I am finished a book, is meet with these sources in person in the different countries that they are, no? So I can find the information. And other things that I have realized is that my sources, at the same time, they are connecting to Venezuela sources directly. Intelligence sources, people who work in the government, people who, people who are on the street. So what we try to do is combine my sources, my physical sources, my sources, because the reliable relation that we have, and look for information with other sources. And then we combine, of course, the possibility that we have journalists in the country. So some journalists taking a lot of security measures. They used to go to the street, and they used to go to have a interview with some of the sources. So I think that that is the best way that I have done in order to continue covering the stories about Venezuela, especially the stories about political, about elections, and about migration.
Mhm. Carlos, Fernando, or Cesar, do you want to add to that? Carlos, Fernando, I think you're still
Yeah,
muted. There
I'm
we go.
sorry.
Thanks.
As I said before, this has been a long process of adapting to reporting from exile that has been going through more than 5 years now. There were some times in which we still had reporters in Nicaragua, although they were incognito. They could not present themselves as reporters, because this is a crime currently in Nicaragua. But now even those reporters had to leave the country during the last, let's say, police raids in the year 2024. So at this moment, we don't have a single reporter in the country. We have collaborators, we have sources, and we have ways, and we have to increase, not double checking, but triple or 4 or 5 times to check information in order to verify it, because we don't have open sources. All sources that talk to us have to go through a process of taking some risk. They feel, first of all, they want to know if their communication is safe, and we have to provide them with secure channels of communication for people to provide us information. Then we have to check it and verify it through different processes. And it takes time, and it's very difficult. There are a lot of rumors, and we have to put away rumors. We have to put away disinformation. Yes, we check social media, but social media is intoxicated with disinformation.
Mhm.
So it is much more difficult to report when you don't have public sources, but you don't have independent sources that you can quote either. They all require anonymity. And when people require anonymity, they tend to give you a lot of opinions and sometimes very little facts. So we have to work very hard on that. Now, I could continue talking about the difficulties, but I would prefer to talk about the kind of stories that we can break. Even with these difficulties, yes, we talk about the 30 political prisoners in Nicaragua who at this moment are in a condition of disappearance. They don't know, their families don't know where they are. The government do not accept to have these people in prison. Some of them have been there for more than a year, some several months. We break stories about migration, the Nicaraguan people, Nicaraguan exodus through Costa Rica or to the United States, or the condition of the economy dominated by the informal economy and the influx of remittances. Or in these days, yes, we're talking about the uncertainty that Nicaraguan workers and businessmen are going through in a process in which the US is investigating violations of the commercial treaty called CAFTA that allows Nicaragua to export in a very favorable conditions to the US. Now, in the next weeks, the US government is going to make an announcement, a decision about either suspending some of these favorable conditions or to imposing that, what is that, Mr. Trump favorite word? Uh, we call it in Spanish aranceles, but what's the word?
Tariff.
Tariffs.
Tariff,
Tariffs.
tariff,
Oh, tariffs.
tariff.
Yes.
Yes. But we also have reported about an espionage Russian base in collusion with the Nicaraguan military army. And we also do a lot of reporting on the most, let's say, tasty, the most demanding story for Nicaraguan audiences, which is internal purges, the process of uh, eliminating people who are considered to be very loyal to the government, high officers, either civilian, military, or in the police, that from one day to another they fall in disgrace. Sometimes it's because they're not considered to be loyal enough. In other cases, it's because they are accused of what we call unauthorized corruption, because corruption is official. There is official corruption in our country, and we report about the official corruption, about the businesses of the governing family. Uh, but there's also another type of corruption that apparently has not been authorized officially. And so we have break a lot of those stories. And one of the interesting things is that when we talk about the internal erosion within the dictatorship, our audience tends to double and triple and going much more. Why? Because these are people who are not probably our hardcore loyal readers. These are readers that probably tend to support the government or tend to be closer to the governing party, and they don't have other sources to find out about what is going on within the dictatorship crisis than the independent press. Now, each of those stories that I am mentioning requires a lot of work. Sometimes probably more than a couple of months, sometimes less, but We go through the agonizing process every day of keeping the credibility and trying to verify the information that we publish.
Which is crucial. The steps that you have to go to protect your sources, to protect your team, to be able to give people the information they need when there is no other information is so crucial. And just following up really quickly on what you just said, somebody from the audience had a question about Carlos Fernando. You mentioned the secure communication channels that you use. Can you tell us any more details about what those channels are? Because we do know that so much of technology these days has been surveilled. In El Salvador, we had
Yeah.
dealt with Pegasus. So,
Well, I guess we all tend to rely more on signal than in any other way of communication. I still think WhatsApp works well under some circumstances, uh, but uh, but there is a paranoia. Everyone is fearing that the government is watching us, which is somehow it is true. Although I don't think their intelligence mechanism are that powerful as they pretend to be. They're more brutal than intelligence.
yeah.
But the key thing, there are not many sources. There are very few sources, and I think the most important thing is how to build trust. Now, once you build trust, then you start building different ways about communication. Sometimes this communication will have to be frozen for some period because people are scared that they're being under vigilance. So there are a lot of interruption in this process of communication.
And Cesar, obviously, journalists in El Salvador were being surveilled. So, can you talk a little bit about how journalism has changed for you since going into exile?
Well, first of all, I want to say that we have learned a lot from Nicaraguan colleagues, from their experience doing journalism from outside. And since then, we are being preparing the scenario for these days. So, but at the biggest challenge for doing journalism right now, especially from Exile, is fear. And it's very important to remind context. El Salvador is under a regime of exception since March 2022. The government's sole this measure is like for controlling gangs, but in reality, it's a weapon to social control, a chilling reminder that anyone who dares to think or speak differently could be in jail or worse. So these fears traveled in two directions. First of all, because many journalists have decided to simply stop reporting because the risk is too high. And for us, it's very sad to this loss. I don't judge that because it's a very brave decision to step down, but it's a loss, not just for the media landscape, it's a loss for the community, for the society. So we understand that decisions. But second, the fears is for the sources. The sources inside the government or those to access to vital information right now are terrified. They know if they are discovered speaking with a journalist like us, they could end in jail. So right now we have to change the way, not the method. The method because double check, like Carlos Fernando said earlier, but we're extremely I don't know how to say. Well, we have to more steps to do our job, and working remotely makes everything harder. For example, a crucial tool for our investigative journalists' work was access to public records. Because of that, This record allowed us to track the explosive growth of wealth of officials who entered to Bukele administration without nothing, and now there are terratenientes, landowners. Right now, being in exile is difficult to physical access to those public records, but we manage a way to do it. I can say it, which way it is for security reasons, but that allows us still to have some information to speak about corruption in government. But right now, the real risk we run is a potential blackout information, because right now we're going through a transitional period. Like right now, since May, a lot of media is working to normalize their situation. So the quantity of investigation are low than before. So there's a huge part of risk of freedom of expression. We are a little worried about that, because if we compare the situation earlier, then we have a lot of material that showing to the world and to El Salvador how the situation was. But right now we are we have less information. So we are telling the people they need to support journalists, because it's the way to get verified information, a good information about this thing that the government probably don't want to know. So it's difficult, but it's slow right now. But we managed to produce some of the journals that we used to do before.
And it's really interesting to hear the dedication that you all have, the fact that you continue to do these jobs. You know, you talked about the agonizing decisions of going into exile, but you didn't say, I'm not going to be a journalist anymore. I'm going to stop doing journalism because it's going to put me or my family or other people I know at risk. So why, or I guess, what role does exile journalism play in shaping both international and local understandings of authoritarian regimes and the situation on the ground? And why, for you all, was it so important to still continue working as a journalist?
I'd like to say first, Summer, that we're not activists, we're journalists, and we have to break silence. If you ask me why we continue doing journalism, we have to break censorship, because we have to break silence, and because we have to represent voices that are shut down or that are in prison, or people that have been killed, or people that are in fear. This is Cesar was talking about the exception state in El Salvador. In Nicaragua is a de facto police state. It has never been declared a law, an emergency law suspending rights. Simply all rights have been completely eliminated. I mean, I myself, and not only myself, more than 450 Nicaraguan individuals, we have been deprived of our nationality. We have been declared stateless, accused falsely, of course, of betraying the homeland. Our properties, home, even my pension, even my Social Security pension had been confiscated. Okay, but we continue because it's not a question of there are other people probably that have suffered much more punishment or revenge of this kind of personalistic authoritarian regimes. But when all freedoms have been eliminating. When there is no freedom of reunion, freedom of mobilization, electoral freedom, religious freedom, the last reserve of freedom is journalism in exile. This is what keeps us working every day in exile, but having our ears and eyes in Nicaragua, because this is the last space of information. And now we are going in through a new phase. Cesar was talking about learning from Nicaraguan experience. Well, we are also learning from Venezuela, and we're also learning from Cuba, preparing ourselves for the shutdown of internet. We still have an audience in Nicaragua. People can read, can watch our videos in Confidencial website, confidencial.digital or Confidencial in YouTube, but they cannot comment, they cannot retweet, they cannot share the information. That's a crime, and the state is exercising this vigilance on people. But now there is a threat that the censorship will extend into internet. And we are preparing, we're working on that, where we are trying to give people confidence that we will be there, we will be ready, there will not be silence, that we will continue providing information. By the way, today it was an accident of Cloudflare. I guess all of us, I know Efecto Cocuyo, Confidencial, and many other media outlets were out of the line for about 3 hours, but I believe this is something that went completely beyond us. I don't know what it was. I don't know what happened. I cannot say it was something that was targeted particularly on us. It was a global phenomenon, but we have to be prepared to face these kind of situations.
I would like to support on Carlos Fernando's explanation about that we are not activists. We only want to do journalism. The question is when you want to do your job and you can do that because the government or other powers try to suffocate you. You have to stop and say, okay, I'm going to continue doing this, or what are I going to do? In my case, I have spent all of my life doing journalism. I always say that I have the good fortunate that I grow up in a democracy. So there is different from other young people from other generations that they didn't could see how the democracy was. So I think and I have a responsibility also with that this kind of this generation they are coming because we can learn each other. We can learn about the young people and the young generation, how they are dealing with the fears, with this kind of situation, and how we did in a different context, because as I said before, I grew up in a democracy. So that is different. Another thing that that Carlos Fernando and Cesar was put on the table, there is the learnings that we are each other about the situation about Nicaragua and now El Salvador, which when we try to describe what happened, we see a pattern, an authoritarian way playbook. That the most important thing about this authoritarian playbook is that they are not ideological. It's not the right, it's not the left, it's the same thing. So we can see that kind of behavior on our country in Venezuela, which the government say that they are from the left, from the socialism, and we can see in El Salvador, which the President Bukele, which is supposed to be a person in the middle of the right. I don't know in which space he is standing. But what we are describing in our experiences and the experiences that I am reading on the chat is that the experiences of a way to mandate the populism and authoritarianism. And one of the column that they attack always is the freedom of speech, media, and independent journalists.
Yeah. Okay. I think doing journalism in Exile has two functions, two principal functions right now. The second is a consequence of the first one. In the first, our work for me must focus on documenting the precise moment we're living through right now. This is very important to future Salvadorian generations and those outside El Salvador to understand how the country lost its democracy and succumbed to a new dictatorship 90 years after his last one. Our journalists record and serve as a historical repository. They are placed where the facts, the context, and the stories of what happened during these years are kept. When an authoritarian regime tries to control the narrative, the exiled press needs to become a witness of primary keeper of what happened in the country. And the second function is to exile journalists is to act as a warning to other nations. Our experience is a clear and painful, not just El Salvador experience, Nicaragua, Venezuela, Cuba experience is a painful reminder to countries that are currently being tempted by the idea of solving nation problems through populism and authoritarianism. It's easy to believe that to handing absolute power to one person is the easiest way to fix things. But our history, the story of the world, proves that that is impossible. Dictatorships do not improve society, they destroy them. The long term of this deterioration is incalculable. So our journalists must serve as a vital warning. It must be an alert to any society considering import the Bukele virus, because some people say it's a model. There is a false model that promotes the illegal disregard of constitutional and destruction of the judicial branch and the separation of powers. So we must alert from this virus. There's many people in Latin America, in other ways, in other countries in the world, are tempted to reach. It's very dangerous. So our journalists must be there to anyone who wants to read or know what happened.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. The journalists in your situations right now are the canaries in the coal mine. They're letting us know what the problem is, and the rest of the world needs to be paying attention. Um, the United States, other countries, right? We can learn a lot from what y'all are going through. And I'm going to pose one last question and then I'll get to audience questions. But this is a heavy topic, but there's got to be hope still, right? So, what gives you hope for the future of press freedom in your country and in Latin America generally? Hopefully, something.
I am the optimist of the group. No, I think that you know there even we are having very difficult times. I think that something in my case that helped me is that I have a community of supporting. For example, I gonna tell you something. I always see Carlos Fernando and other colleagues in other spaces, and we always have like a micro session about, each other chatting and sharing our problems, and we always finish the conversation. Okay, but we had to do something. We had to do something. We had to, So for me, that is very important that even there is no organization that is supporting exile journalists, I think that the way that we are dealing with this kind of situation make us to create the partnership, the alliance, the conversation group, the WhatsApp group, or whatever you want, and some spaces to feel understood by people, because every of us and some of the people who are in this conversation, they are living the same situation. And I think that that is important. And the second thing is more my personal position, is more spiritual position, as you can see. I don't know, is that anything lasts forever, you know. And I am very, very pragmatic in this kind of situation. And I had to say that I learned that kind of approach looking at Carlos Fernando's, for example. 15 years ago, I wrote to him, I'm going to stay here fighting. And then, and he wrote an email saying to me, Luz, you have to understand that this kind of regime, you never know where they are going to finish. So you have to continue doing your life, doing improving your tools, improving your career. You have to do your job. So for me, that's advice was a very, very clear for advice, because I'm continuing doing my job. Even the situation get complicated, and I know that in my heart, and I had to say my heart and in my soul, that never lasts forever. Even us, we don't last forever. It's like an existentialist point.
Uh-huh. Yeah. César, go ahead.
Yeah, I was thinking in this question, and I have three potential ways to have hope. And first of all is that we have a strong group of Salvadorian journalists that they are willing to continue doing journalism, and despite the circumstances, despite the exile, and without romanticizing the difficult. I think we must celebrate that journalists continue this noble profession outside the country. And it's a very good news to know that. Second, I think this knowing that there's a continuing group, there's a large number of young men and women who are joining this profession right now. So despite the situation, they want to be a journalist because they know the importance of telling right now what happened in El Salvador. And for this new journalist and the old one like me, I think we have a commitment with society, not just with the society, to ourselves, and in my case, to my family, my daughter, to continue doing what we do, because it's very important. I want to have hope for my daughter. I can think there is no hope, you know. And the last part, I think we have hope because we have this certainty. This will end someday, because no dictatorship is eternal. This moment will also pass, and I hope that we and me could see that in the future.
You're still muted, Carlos.
Sorry again. I am optimistic in the long run because a personalistic dictatorship, a family dictatorship, a dynasty project like the one we have in Nicaragua is not sustainable. We saw that picture long time ago with the Somoza dictatorship, and it didn't last it, and this dictatorship would not last. Now, I cannot make how do you say? Uh, I cannot give you a date, but when change will take place, I am absolutely certain that freedom of the press and freedom of expression cannot be restored unless there is full political change. And that means eliminating police state, eliminating the dictatorship. Now, in the meantime, what keeps me uh, what gives me hope is that I feel that there is an audience, that what we are doing is connected to an audience in Nicaragua and abroad our country. And that is a light of hope and a light of certainty that there will be change. We will not provoke that change. I mean, I'm not have that kind of naive ambition idea that we will be the promoters of change. But as long as we are there, as we are telling the story, as we are criticizing, I think we are building that freedom of conscience, resistance principle for change, for those that have to make the change possible. And I think this is something that you win every day. Every day we're breaking stories that are relevant. I think we are part of that change.
Absolutely. And I was taking a look at the comments here. I just want to reiterate what Cesar was saying earlier about the work that you all are doing as being a warning to everyone. Because, as I mentioned earlier, this uh, oppression of press freedom, oppression of journalists is happening around the world, and we can all learn from your experiences. Um, and as I mentioned, it's happening here in the US. And so it's important that people everywhere understand how you are continuing your work and why you're doing it and what the warning signs are that we need to look for so that we as journalists in other parts of the world can recognize, hey, we're following down the path of Nicaragua, we're following down the path of Venezuela or El Salvador or whatever other country that it might be. Now, I think there's an interesting question in the audience chat here that I want to go to, and it is from Night Center director Rosenthal Alves and his class on Latin American reporting that he has watching this panel with him. And his question is about the fact that you all are doing quality journalism. And it goes back to what Carlos Fernando was saying earlier about breaking that news, that relevant news every single day, still continuing to provide that quality journalism. But in your countries, or definitely in Venezuela and El Salvador, less so in Nicaragua, but there's still media outlets that are operating that have been co-opted, if you will, by the governments. So how do you, and these outlets are sympathetic to the governments. So how do you compete, so to speak, with those
Yeah.
outlets? How do you make sure that your message gets heard louder and shared further than the propaganda, oftentimes coming from these other outlets?
Well, I think that telling the truth, when some media and journalists are caught or deliver propaganda, people know about that because, for example, in Venezuela, people know about the propaganda of the public media, and when they are going to our sites or to our WhatsApp or to our Instagram or social network, they are looking real information. And I would like to bring to the table an example that is happening right now, about this situation in the Caribbean Sea with the United States government strike some I don't know how to say it.
The
So
boats.
small boats, and and this kind of situation of tension that there is going to have um, an attack on Venezuela space. So people, even there is a de facto suspension of freedom of speech or expression in Venezuela, people is talking about that situation and people is looking information about that. So what I mean is that we have to continue in doing our job because people is going to look for the space that we have the job. But I would like to bring another problem or issue to the table, which is we are not competing against the government and the COP, the media, because there is a change in the audiences looking for information in other spaces. What we are fighting right now, for example, is about we are fighting against the disinformation machinery, people who deliver false information, and we are like uh, dealing with the creator and influencer economy, because there are a lot of people that they are deliver some contents, but they not follow the method of journalism to to be very verified and this kind of thing, and this kind of method. Then we have to look the information, we have to fight against government. And then when we deliver the information, we have to fight for the audiences, because people is looking a lot of contents. So I think that there is a complex situation, but we trying to understand the complex of the audiences that is looking information, real information.
Well, if you ask people in Nicaragua about how they get their information, most people will say through social media. They would not say through official media or through co-opted media or through independent media. I think official media it's doing a very bad job. Co-opted media is very good about covering sports, about covering crime, about covering some things about services and utilities. And we are trying to fill the void of the information people cannot get anywhere else. And that has to do with corruption, that has to do with repression, persecution against the church, but also, and it's something that it probably much more difficult for us to do, is to produce information that is useful, that has some kind of special utility for people's daily life in terms of their communities, their economies, their health, education, this kind of basic services, violence against community, against women. And that requires a lot more of work because we don't have we don't have reporters there, we don't have enough sources to tell that kind of stories. But the most challenging thing for me is to deal with the machinery of disinformation within social media. Some of it is fabricated, and another one is just the dynamic of toxic information and yellow journalism or red journalism, whatever. And there's some half truth. Uh, people just uh, people just share information without checking sources or without checking any kind of verification. And I said, well, I read it in the internet. My aunt told me because she read that in Facebook. And that's the most difficult thing for me in terms of if we could talk about competition. And the only thing that we can do is to establish the credibility of the brand, the credibility of the name, the credibility of people said, well, Confidencial is not the one that says first the information, but that's the one that I like to check in order to verify if it is true what everybody else is talking about, and how are they going to tell me that story. That's our aspiration.
Mhm.
I don't know if you want to answer that question or another one.
No, go ahead.
Okay. I think it's a very unfair battle because in El Salvador, there's still the most media that the people use to get information is still the television. And the television right now is working for the government because they are threatened because since airtime belongs to the states. So the government can force television to say nothing about the reality in the country. So that is very important. And fighting against propaganda and disinformation is also complicated because they have a lot of $1 million. And El Salvador is ruled by a advertising agency, you know. So working fighting against that is very difficult. But for us, the most important thing to accomplish in this year is starting to talking in social media like the government do, taking our name, our credibility, and doing satirical information, doing a video information, some way to enter a space living on social media to the people to going through a very information that anyone can verify. So we took very similar tools to get to the emotions because we know that right now the people is very influenced by the emotions. So we need to think the way that we can manage to send our journalist message investigations to a very easy way to anyone can understand. And then if anyone want to go deeper, they can read our material because anything that we do large investigations, and then we simplify the steps in the investigation to a tiny pieces of material and working to get to the younger audiences and with a language that anyone can understand and share. So we have this experiment doing satirical news appearances and like it's like a newsroom, and that worked very good for us. But right now it's difficult because because of the threats and the exile. Many of those journalists that doing that before, they're scared, and it's very understandable. But I think we need to understand the ways that people get information right now. We don't want, we in fact don't want to go against that because it's not work if our journalists, our investigator, we're doing our investigated and no one's reads. We need to this objective that reach more people, reach, and it is possible, younger on this.
You all have brought up so many important points related to media literacy, related to the role of content creators, and something that we haven't even talked about yet is AI and how artificial intelligence is influencing your work and um, the journalism that you all do, the journalism that's happening around the world. I don't know if really briefly, maybe in the last minute here, you want to talk a little bit about AI.
Oh my gosh. We have a say in Spanish. We are so many people, and the grandmother gave birth. We have a lot of problems, and now we have this situation, this dealing with. Um, Personally, I am not. Pessimistic about the AA because I am an early adopter of technology. So I am very excited about the generative artificial intelligence. But I think that always happen. Journalists or the media organization got late to this kind of change, the technological change. So what I think that in our case, for example, I have to say that we use two 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 people I don't know how to say two avatar of with artificial intelligence to deliver information about Venezuela. And it's called the El Chamo El Pana y la Chama. I don't remember the way that we used to say to the young people. And we create an alliance and we produce all the information, but the presenters, the people who was in face and on social media were these two avatar, because we have to protect the face of the journalists that because the persecution of the government. So there is an example that we how we can combine our experiences and our expertise with this kind of tools of artificial intelligence.
Well, we are about out of time, so I just want to thank you all for being here with us today. At the Night Center, we have been supporting exiled journalists from Nicaragua and El Salvador who have gone to Costa Rica. And there are a lot of other resources out there. Some of it is in the chat. But if anybody wants to learn more information, please check out those resources or come to us at the Night Center. And this video will also be posted on the Night Center website. So you'll be able to come back and use it for further resources as if you want to double check what was said today. So thank you so much again to Carlos Fernando, Luz Mely, y César, but for this incredible conversation. I think it's so important, and I think we are able to learn a lot from the work you're doing. And thank you for the work that you're doing. It is so valuable and so important. And despite the risks, you all are making a difference, and we are very grateful for all that you're doing. So thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you. And thanks for all the people in the audience. A lot of comments, a lot of questions. Hope we will have 2, 3, 4 more hours to engage with you. Sorry.
Muchas gracias.
Gracias, and everybody
Thank
who
you.
want to write to me, you are free to do that, and we are in this path together. So
Yeah.
see you.
Right.
Bye.